So, it's a rainy Saturday afternoon in July here in Northern Ireland, and it's a fantastic day, opportunity to go down to dojo and go practice some Kendo, which I'm really looking forward to. I've got 2 hours of Kendo, followed immediately by an hour of Iaido practice. So, yeah, we're going to head down to the dojo. Today, I wanted to talk about, Jodan, taking Jodan, the reasons why you might decide you want to take Jodan, how and when you make the switch, and reasons that you may not decide to take Jodan, which are rarely discussed. I thought I would tackle this because, I often hear this question get asked on other YouTube channels, and say, for example, the likes of, the Kendo show or something like that with Andy Fisher, who's obviously a high grade, and, he's Renshi, Rokudan or Sixdan, and obviously very knowledgeable and has a lot to offer. But the one thing he isn't is somebody who actually plays Jodan. So I thought I would just maybe, I might have a different perspective to offer since I actually practice Jodan. So I'll talk a little bit about, how I made the decision, when I made the switch, and kind of how I go about practicing my Jodan and balancing that with coaching in chudan. And yeah, we'll just get into it. And as I said, maybe some things to consider as to why you might choose not to. So I'll try and point out both the kind of positives and well, not negatives, but like as I said, like just a couple of words of caution. And hopefully that will, if you're considering that kind of switch to Jodan or even Nito, maybe this video will be of benefit because it might get you to just have a careful think about just exactly how you're going to make that decision. And if you do decide to change to a different kamae or a different style, when's a good time to make that switch, and maybe some ideas on how you can manage the transition training-wise in terms of everyday practice inside the dojo. So yeah, let's head to the dojo and let's go do some Kendo. Yeah, so like I said, it's a very rainy day in Northern Ireland. Our dojo is based in Belfast in Northern Ireland, and yeah, this is typical weather most times of the year. So yeah, so this is our dojo that we're heading to in the background, that building at the end of the street there. And we're very fortunate. We're lucky to own our own dojo, which is a pretty rare thing for a Kendo dojo. So we're very grateful, but it's a work in progress. It's very windy today. Right, let's get in there and get training. So I figured I'd talk about it from the perspective of, somebody who's actually taken Jodan No Kamae, because most of the time this question gets asked to people that play chudan. And obviously they're, in the case of the likes of Andy Fisher, for example, he is a senior, six dan, so Renshi 6 dan as well. And so obviously what he's got to say has a lot of value, carries a lot of weight. So I really just want to, I guess, kind of add to that and complement it, and maybe it'll add a bit of context as to why higher grades say the things they do when it comes to, say, starting Jodan or Nito or something like that. Okay, so let me just talk about a bit about myself. Like, how did I arrive at this? I guess I started really taking the thought of doing Jodan seriously from about Shodan. Once I passed Jodan. However, I didn't really commit to it in any physical capacity of training, but I had a strong idea that that is the route I wanted to eventually go with my Kendo. Now, the reason, put it this way, it wasn't as simple as that. So it wasn't like I was Shodan and I was like, oh, I'm going to be a Jodan player, and then started playing Jodan. That's not how it went down. So it actually took quite a long time
to kind of peg this down, but I just knew I had the idea of this could be something that is for me back then. Okay, and I dabbled in it once or twice. You know, I kind of tried it out, and I had some idea of how it was supposed to work just from some videos and things like that I'd watched. You know, everyone knows the kind of famous Chiba Sensei videos and stuff like that. Anyway, but because at that point, anyway, I'll get back to that. Right? The point is, I didn't jump in right at that point. I just kind of dabbled in it a little bit, but I focused on my chudan, and then I kind of put it aside. I put Jodan aside for a while. Just to kind of focus on my overall Kendo development and focus on becoming a better coach, because I had to become a coach from Shodan, which I wasn't really expecting to have to do so early in my Kendo career, but that's the way it worked out. Anyway, I'd always kind of admired, I mentioned Chiba Sensei earlier, I'd always admired Kendoka like him, particularly his style of Jodan. When you watch his style of Jodan, it's not very jumpy. You know, he doesn't really bounce around a lot. He's really, really like solid and assertive, and he moves forward. He's quite immovable for a Jodan player. I quite like that. I like Jodan players that are not like sort of really easily kind of flustered. Like, they don't break their kamae very much. They just kind of assert themselves on their opponent. And I've always kind of leaned towards more like Debana style waza, you know, arriving at the target first and kind of really looking to take that first initiative and take it early, if that makes sense. Beat the other player to the punch, so to speak. So, and that's, you know, don't get me wrong, I love Oji waza, Men Kaishiro, Kote Suriagemen, you know, all these different kind of waza. I love that, and I love the wrist work side of that as well. And I think that's required learning, regardless of if you take Jodan or not. That being said, if I'm playing in Shiai, I take most of my points with Debanamen. And maybe Dekote from time to time, maybe the odd Nukido. But when I say Nukido, according to Sumi Sensei, it's more like Debana Do, because his view on what constitutes Nukido is a bit different. For him, it's like, you know, you invite them in, they step in, you step out to the side and cut Do. So you're kind of a bit behind the timing. I'm talking about the one where it's like, as they're about to set off, you cut Do. It looks just like Kaishi Do, except there's no Kaishi, there's no contact. But most people call that Nukido, but I think really the timing is more Debana, that style of doing that Do. Anyway, it's not a biggie. The point is, I always favoured that kind of style of Kendo. Even though I have the other waza under my belt now. But you know, to really get to know what kind of player I was for myself, that's the thing I wasn't really ready for at Shodan. So while I may have had a bit of technical know-how about how the kamae worked, and was able to like dabble in it and kind of get a little feel for it and not be put off, I can see why most teachers would suggest Sandan or higher to start thinking about whether or not you're going to take a different kamae. And I think that's because you need to know the fundamentals well enough. Not just know them, it's not know how to do them. They need to be part of your Kendo. Like, you need to be able to execute a good variety of things to a certain level, where you have essentially then acquired the fundamentals of Kendo. And I think at that point, you can know yourself as a Kendoka a bit. And you can, by that point, you can know what your style is becoming, what kind of Kendoka you are becoming. I think before that, it's presumptuous sometimes to think that you know what kind of Kendoka you are, because you have no vocabulary before that, or you have an extremely limited vocabulary. Once your vocabulary expands, you're able to express yourself more freely, and then you can decide what kind of player you are. Or you can see that in yourself, or other people can observe it. Now, there are other reasons for taking Jodan. You know, so basically, I guess what I'm getting at that, you know, with that point is I'm more of a like a one-shot kill kind of guy most times. Not all the time. I obviously do still most of my Kendo in chudan, and I coach in chudan. You know, so when I play Jodan, it's against peers only, peer level people only, or you know, I might do so in like individual shiai. At this point, I'm not happy to let it, you know, off the hook yet for team shiai. I want to do the best for my team, and I'm still working on my Jodan. I'm not ready to like present it to the public, so to speak, yet. I'm only presenting it in these videos for educational purposes only, not because I think I'm some kind of hotshot. In fact, I know the weaknesses of my Jodan, and I'm sure teachers will point out other weaknesses to me that maybe I'm not aware of, but I think I know Kendo well enough now to spot like the most obvious and glaring ones. And I'm okay with that, you know. I'm okay with developing it in parallel to my regular Kendo for some time before I sort of take it out, so to speak, and deploy it against other opponents. So I'm kind of happy to use it in individual shiai at the moment, where the only person who loses out if I lose is me, because it's a learning exercise for me and nothing more. But in the context of team shiai, I would probably still play chudan at the moment, and that's just because I take that responsibility very seriously, that other people are also kind of depending on my performance. So I want to do my best Kendo. And at the moment, my best Kendo is still my Kendo in chudan, but I am working on my Jodan. Anyway, like I said, there are some. So I've got that one shot kill kind of style of Kendo, and that's why I feel comfortable like that. I also feel like Jodan has taught me a few things about seme. Your fence really open. You know, your kote is exposed, your ski is exposed, your door is exposed. There's a way that you get kept honest. You know, Jodan is meant to be the kamae of fire and confidence, right? And well, put it this way, you're going to spend a lot of time getting your bluff called. People are going to thrust you. They're going to take your kote. They're going to take your kote again. They're gonna, you know, and the moment you think you've got the handle on taking the, you know, the kote some way out of the firing line, or you get defensive, then they're going to pop you on the man. So it has a way of making sure you're humbled often by people. It's not an easy kamae to pick up, and yeah, I'll get into the technical stuff of, you know, a little bit later if you're still interested. Right now, I'm just sticking to the reasons why you might not want to take Jodan. But anyway, so there are a couple of other reasons that you might want to take Jodan. So, for instance, if you've got an injury, left leg is injured, you can't launch off of it, you know, it's like a left calf injury or something like that, right? And you can't really push off of that leg the same way anymore. And you figure, well, if I switch stance, then that's going to give me a chance to keep going at Kendo, you know, and be able to do a more complete practice of Kendo. I think that's absolutely fine, and that's the kind of thing that usually people hash out with their dojo leader or their sensei or senpai or someone like that, and there's a mutual agreement like, okay, this is the way forward. We're going to come up with a strategy to keep this person in Kendo rather than out through injury. That's fantastic, and that call can be made, you know, that's a call that can be made at any time really in your Kendo career. It's usually suggested to you by your seniors, so that's fine. I mean, you don't worry about that. You do what you got to do if it keeps your training going. And then the next reason I've heard of, which is more common I suppose in Japan, is sometimes people get asked to play a certain position on the team, and they get asked to take Jodan for that, especially if they're tall. Because if they're tall, their men is kind of a bit harder to hit, statistically speaking, for most people. And it can mean also, like, because a lot of people are reasonably inexperienced playing against Jodan, matches often result in a draw. So, like, that doesn't necessarily need to be a situation that the Jodan player is amazing and is going to win all the time. They can just be a very decent kendoka, and other people will fence against them and will be unable to land convincing ippon against them because they can't hit their man, but they maybe are a little inexperienced to deal with the strategy that Jodan player is going to use against them, knowing that their men is hard to hit. So there's a way of kind of closing off options. So you can play them tactically. You can play your Jodan player tactically and statistically increase your likelihood of taking a draw for that match or maybe bagging the win. But statistically, it's unlikely you're going to lose. And that's kind of how it was seen. And so that was quite common for, Japanese high schools, from what I understand. That there was X amount of people that would just, if they kind of fit the build, they would get eyeballed and, it would be suggested to them that they take Jodan. And I believe Sumi Sensei is one of those people. Not a lot of people probably know that Sumi Sensei can play Jodan, that he's very familiar with it. But I believe it was in high school or university. I may be mistaken, but last seminar that I attended with him teaching, in the senior role, obviously running the seminar, that's something he talked about. Was that he got picked out. I'm pretty sure it was high school that he got picked out, and they wanted him to play Jodan because he's a reasonably tall guy for a Japanese fellow. And I guess they just fell with his build and that sort of thing, and with what the team needed at the time, that they would ask him if he played that position, the kind of middle position as a Jodan player. And so he picked up a few years of experience like that. And obviously, nowadays, he's Hachidan, so he could take upside down Kamae and probably look good, But anyway. The point is, I've seen him play Jodan, and it's quite beautiful to watch. But so there's that sort of thing. That's that tactical play. I think probably the biggest argument against taking Jodan is if you're taking it for the wrong reasons, and probably if you're taking it too early. Like if you're just in a rush to take it because maybe you think just because it kind of looks cool. Because let's be honest, aesthetically, it's one of the more entertaining things when you're a beginner, if you haven't seen, and it's rare to see, right? So if you saw it every day, maybe it wouldn't blow people away, but most people, the first time they see Jodan, it leaves a bit of an impression, as long as it's been done well. My first experience of seeing Jodan played was my first sensei in my first dojo, and he was 5th dan at the time, and he was playing another senior sensei. And I think they were just taking a bit of Jodan here and there against each other because they didn't have any Jodan players to practice against. So I believe it was just a bit of an arrangement of, one of them will play Jodan for a bit of the keiko, and then they'll switch around and the other person might take Jodan, and it just gives both of them a bit of experience, in practice against Jodan, really, more than anything. So it wasn't something he did every day, but I remember that leaving an impression on me. And that was before I even knew of Chiba Sensei and those sorts of people. So, anyway, that stuck with me. And that's maybe why later on when I came across people like Chiba Sensei, it was just like I say, Chiba Sensei and Tora Sensei are a massive influence in terms of like when I look at people's Kendo that I would like to have. It's just super decisive. They're super imposing in terms of how their spirit projects through their Kamae, and their waza and their timing and everything it's really decisive and really explosive, and there's a ruthlessness about Chiba Sensei's Kendo, but it's also very beautiful to look at, and I really enjoy that. So that's kind of the influence for me and where it was coming from. But like I said, the danger is you start because you think that looks cool when you like Shodan or lower, right, or whatever it is, like Shodan Nidan. It's easy to look at that and go, well, that looks amazing, and so I'll just, that's how I want to do my Kendo, without really understanding what you could be getting into, how much you could be sidetracking your regular development of Kendo, because you're going to be using your feet the other way around, you're going to be doing katate waza. It is quite possible to just kind of run yourself off in another direction, and maybe you could get a couple of years into it and it doesn't work out so well for you because maybe that isn't really where your natural leaning is for Kendo. And then what are you going to do? Switch back to chudan and then have to go through some of that stuff again, like the fundamentals of footwork and stuff, trying to get that back up to the speed it should have been? And could you end up having lost a load of time because, you tried to run before you could walk before? And believe me, it's hard enough. It's hard enough, right? I waited until Sandan Yondan before I really started being like, yeah, okay, I think I'm going to do this. And I'm going to come up with a bit of a training plan to start developing my Jodan without sacrificing my chudan and my coaching. And even I notice with a plan in place, like I'm getting steady and trackable improvement in what I'm doing in Jodan. Well, yeah, it's there, but I've had some complications, obviously we all have with the pandemic and all that kind of thing. That's kind of been slap bang in the middle of all this. But the point is, I can track it, I can improve on it, and I know I'm going forward with it. And I know my chudan isn't going backwards. That's also still moving forward. So I think that's the benefit of if you wait and you listen to your seniors, if it's just a style thing, and you hang on in there, and you wait until, that kind of third dan, fourth dan level, and, by then, your sensei or someone like that knows, like, okay, you've got a solid foundation, right? Okay, let's see what we can do about this Jodan situation and see if we can help you out. And from there, yeah, I mean, then it's not so bad if you have to travel, because finding a Jodan teacher is almost impossible, right? They're few and far between everywhere in the world, right? So if you're going to have to travel to see one, that's not so bad if you already have your fundamentals under your belt. If you only get to see them, I don't know, every 6 months or once a year, depending on how far away they are, could be really awkward to get back and forward to them, or really expensive, or whatever the case. So if you already have your fundamentals under your belt, it's harder to go like really off the rails and go completely the wrong direction. It's more likely that you'll generally go in the right direction, left to your own devices training, taking responsibility for your own development. And then you'll go and see them and they'll go, okay, well, a little bit more in this way, a little bit more, small course corrections, that kind of thing. Which is normally the case for when you're kind of your own done and higher anyway. The improvements come from like small changes, but the small changes, they're quite hard to get those last few percentage points, if that makes sense. And so that's normal. That's part of your normal development. Another way to put this, I had a chat with my friend Jim. Jim's was my best man at my wedding. He's one of my best friends now. I've known him as long as we've been helping to run our little dojo. It's like over a decade. And when we were both kind of Shodan level, he had a keiko with me one night in a squash court, and he took Jodan. And from his perspective, I think it's a bit more for fun. Whereas from my perspective, I was obviously a little bit more serious in the back of my mind about it, but still kind of just for fun. Like none of us thought we were hot shots or anything. It was just have a go kind of thing. It was just two of us doing Kendo in a squash court. So, obviously, fast forward a few years later now, quite a long time's passed. I play Jodan and I take it seriously. He doesn't do Jodan at all, aside from kata. He does Jodo. That's different. There's one other guy in our dojo who does a bit of Nito, but I need to get his perspective on it. I'm not sure exactly how seriously he takes it. I don't think he's definitely not prioritizing it, but he's not bad at it. But anyway, I thought I would hand you over to Jim. I had a little chat with him, and I kind of wanted to get his perspective on, if I was the one who decided, oh yeah, I'm going to go for it, what were the reasons why he decided he was definitely not going to go for it, taking Jodan, obviously. So, check this out.
I think I'll be alright.
Right, I seem to recall a certain instance where you and I had a little bout on a squash court in Jodan.
Oh man.
Way back in the day.
Oh yeah.
So obviously it entered your mind at some point to have a little fiddle with Jodan.
Yes.
In the end, you're now Sandan, and Sandan for what, a year and a half, 2 years, maybe longer.
I got
I'm not sure because
I
of
got it in the
pandemic.
before times, so I think I might be coming up to
Before the Empire.
2.5 years now, maybe. God, that's embarrassing. Yeah.
Okay, so when you think back on it, why didn't you take Jodan?
Okay.
Because I think that there's reasons why someone might want to, but I also think there's some reasons why you might decide not to, having considered
There's
it.
a couple of reasons. So obviously, that instance way back when I kind of hope was forgotten to the best of time, but okay, since you've raised it, yes. When we were young in Kendo terms, of course you want to try the cool stuff and do things. The more my Kendo developed and the more I developed into my Kendo, I don't think Jodan would suit me.
Do you think it comes down to there's a bit of a personality element to it?
There's a bit of a personality.
In terms of like the kind of Kendo you want to
Yeah.
do, the kind of Kendo you want to see from yourself.
Part of it comes down to your general temperament, part of it comes down to your personality.
And let's be honest, you do Jodo already, so you've already got a whole bag of other worms open.
Oh yeah, I have a massive can of worms open in terms of Jodo that
So you probably got enough.
Expect to go on
Probably got enough on your plate then.
I've got plenty on my plate. Jodan, however, while yes, when I was young in Kendo terms, it did interest me. The more I grew into Kendo and the more I developed my Kendo, the more I realised that it didn't really suit the way I do Kendo.
I would say you as quite, you're like a Ojiwaza player. You like the setup.
I do like my little bag of tools that has a fair amount of.
And that's something that you don't really get to. You can still use that kind of timing here and there, but it's quite rare with Jodan. You really have to play like more of a Debana game.
Yeah.
And so you can see how chudan would be really comfortable for someone who wants to likes to do Ojiwaza setups. Basically, likes to lay traps. Although people like to say that Jodan is like, oh, I'm going to set you up. I'm going to go here, and then I'm going to go here.
There's another element to it as well, which is dojos in general teach chudan. I'm going to other dojos and stuff and go, oh, I play Jodan. Could be awkward, but that's not the point. My point more is I want them to have good, strong Kendo and chudan, because at the time when we started, we technically were the dojo. And some nights it was just the two of us on the squash court. So in order to bring people in and be able to teach them the basics and teach them the chudan and teach them the way it's kind of generally accepted, and it's not Nito and it's not Jodan and all the rest of that, I needed to make sure that I was really comfortable in my knowledge and what I did and what I was giving to people. So I kind of wanted to work on from that point of view.
Yeah, there's a responsibility when you're not very high level.
Yes.
And you're responsible for other people's Kendo.
Yeah. So there's a whole load of elements played into it, but ultimately it led me down the path that I'm on now. And instead of going, I'll go play with Jodan, I decided to go and play with sticks instead. Different box of hell that I've opened for myself. But yeah, no, those are the main reasons for it. It's sort of temperament, personality, and also where I could most benefit the dojo as we were trying to build the dojo in the first place.
Cool.
So yeah, I think hope that kind of answers your question.
Yeah, thanks for that. Appreciate that.
Not a problem.
Now I'm going to hit Potter up and find out why he does Nito.
For fun.
Yeah, so there you go, Jim's perspective. And again, a lot of it comes down to your personal style. And you can only really know your personal style, I think, in my opinion, from my view and experience, once you've acquired the fundamentals and you have a Kendo vocabulary so that you can express yourself a bit through that vocabulary. And when you have that expressive freedom, you can know your Kendo self. And from that, you should be able to make a decision that isn't going to cost you too much time and isn't going to derail your Kendo development or do harm to your club or, that kind of thing. And those are the kind of things you want to avoid, I think. That's just my opinion, though. Anyway, so that's it. Let me know what you think in the comments. There's a little bonus stuff. We'll talk a little bit about just some of the things I do. So if you are someone who's like trying to go the Jodan route, there's just a couple of things I've been doing. So one is like I'm really working off the back leg, the launching off the right leg, and so we've got this exercise where we're you get your kamae and then you kind of go up on one leg, kind of like Karate Kid style. The idea is you got to hold that front leg off the ground for like 2 Mississippi, say 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, and then you got to drive forward and do your men cut like normal, right? The point of this is to stop any kind of shuffling and adjustments. The idea is to get people to connect their mind to their back leg and feel it, develop a bit of trust and confidence in that leg to carry them through the movement. So it was a chance for a load of beginner kind of level people to practice this, and then for me as someone who's trying to develop my Jodan, that's the kind of thing I need to do, is do a lot of keyhorn and to build my footwork. Like, it's one thing doing Suburi and stuff and getting a strong left arm for Katate Waza. It's no good. It is, I can promise you this, it is completely ineffectual without developing the Kamae and footwork. So that's what I'm trying to do. So for a long time I've been focusing on this driving off with the back foot. We did a couple other things. So then obviously we practiced that with like Hikiwaza as well. So then it's the changeover of the footwork, which can be a bit strange for Jodan, because you start off with the left foot leading, going forward into the cut, and then when you switch to Tsubasari, you're right foot leading to go backwards. So you're effectively exiting in chudan, but you're entering in Jodan, if you know what I mean. So that gave us a chance to practice that, which was an interesting thing for me to experiment with, to actually stop and think about, like, what are you actually doing with the feet here? Because there's a moment in the taitari where if you're not careful with how you make that change in your footwork, you could be vulnerable to getting pushed over and stuff like that. So that was fun to play with. Then we just did some do and kote men. And kote men, a really good one for obviously practicing the just general ki kantai no ichi. With a nidan waza, obviously helps with your wrist, your tenuichi, so the shape of your grip for Jodan, where you really need to have like your thumb, I learned this from Chiba Sensei, was your thumb should have a feeling of like digging into the floor with the way your left hand is positioned over the shinai. So that you're relying on your bone strength to stop the shinai. That way you can get these snappy, fast cuts from Jodan without like destroying your ligaments and tendons. So it's a lot of it's about the ergonomics and shape. So I worked a lot on that, and Nidan was always a good way to test that. But then by upping the ante, because you can do that in chudan all day, in Suburi all day. But it's much more helpful if you've got a motodachi, then you're doing kote men waza, then you're trying to get the feet really to catch up to the hand. So if you've done a bit of work to develop your left arm strength and your gripping proficiency for Jodan, the next step then is, now you can launch with the back foot, can you pick the back foot up? And this for me is like the next big challenge, is trying to get myself to pick up my back foot. So when you watch the footage from the Jikeiko, the 2 Jikeiko with kind of peer level group, one was with my friend Lauren, she's Nidan, and Jim, the guy that I spoke to about Jodan, he's in the second one, and he's Sandan, but he's kind of knocking on the door for Yondan soon. Anyway, the main thing that I picked up is, I can build opportunities, and I can take reasonably clean strikes from Jodan. That's okay. I'm kind of alright with the building opportunities bit, the kind of semi I can kind of starting to get the hang of that. And in places where I commit, I can drive off the back leg reasonably well. A couple of weak elements that I've really found though is when I'm trying to take a kote, for some reason now I don't have very good diagonal footwork, and so my hand's kind of coming around and the angle of the blade is compromised. The hasuji is compromised. I can sometimes make it stick, but it's unreliable, and I need to develop that kote waza. You get that strong. It's a priority for me. As I said before, picking up the back leg, I want to be able to drive into the opponent a lot more and really bring my whole body and commit it forward. I want to be able to express Sutemi properly. Like when I watch my chudan footage and I pop a debana men, it's got some snap, some immediacy. And my Jodan doesn't really have that. It kind of comes, my strikes kind of happen in like 2 motions. And if they don't have it in 2 motions, then it almost looks like a jump rather than a step. So it just doesn't have that quite that snap, that immediacy of the back foot snapping up. And so that's probably going to be my next port of call to work on. And like, I'm doing the same things you would do a lot of times in chudan. I'm trying to do a lot of kirikaishi. Starting off with just cutting the shomen, and then usually I'll do it like a second round, say, where I'll do the sayumen just for a bit of wrist work. And it's practicing your footwork, and forwards and back. And I also try to do a bit of high saburi as well from Jodan as well, because again that helps with the hiketsuke, but you really have to concentrate and make sure you're doing it correctly. It is a bit like going right back to the beginning. In a lot of ways, like, it makes me feel like I'm Ikkyu Shodan again when I'm doing Jodan. The only difference is I know I understand what's going on in my keiko so much better. So I can make strikes, I can make ippon, but when I watch the footage back and I'm pressing myself and being hard on myself, I can see where I want it to be, and obviously it's still a long way from there, but I can see where I want it to be, and at least I've got some idea on how to get it there because of the road I've walked already with chudan and the work I've done coaching people. In terms of how I run a class, if I'm going to take Jodan anywhere, so like this one, for example, I don't know, we had say 4 or 5 juniors or something like that, and then 2 seniors. The 2 seniors were Nidan and Sandan. They know me really well, they're good friends, and I actually spoke to them before the session and said, look, I want to work on a little bit of fundamental Jodan stuff. You guys okay with that? And all that means is that they're receiving for me like that. I was receiving for them in chudan. So that's how we did that for Kihon. And we didn't work on a lot. What we did was a lot of repetitions of those things that you've seen there. Then we just did uchikomi. I received the high side, so it was myself, Lauren and Jim received uchikomi for the rest of the dojo. Made sure everyone got a go, so they got a go with each motodachi, so it was 3 uchikomi keigos for anyone who didn't have armor. That was the end of their session. Then everyone in armor did kakari keiko. That's another thing. If you're practicing Jodan, then you've got to do kakari keiko because you've got to put it under pressure. This one was a bit clunky. Like I said, I'm kind of putting myself out there by showing this because it's not normally what I would do. I'm not trying to show it off and show myself as a good example of Jodan. I'm just trying to share my experience about how I'm tackling it, how I'm trying to go about it. And most teachers that are much higher level than me, when I tell them this stuff and they see how I'm going about it, they respect the way I'm trying to approach it. Well, as far as I know, as far as they've told me, I don't know if they would tell me otherwise. Just, most of them are really nice people, so maybe they're thinking I'm a clut, I don't know. Yeah, and then obviously we had Jikeiko, and what I decided to do was take Lauren's one in mostly chudan and then play for ippon from Jodan. And then with Jim's a bit more, like I said, he's a bit closer as a peer, so for him I did the whole thing in Jodan because for him it's a bit of practice against Jodan that he doesn't always get, so he's usually quite grateful for it. But I don't do that every session. But a lot of times, if I've got a reasonable amount of downgrades and seniors there, then if anyone is kind of 3rd dan or higher, I usually play for my ippon in Jodan. But I'll do the keiko on chudan. Unless I'm having a Jodan day, where I'll be like, okay, I'm doing a bit more focus on it. In which case, I'll have a keiko with each of the higher level people from Jodan and play for the ippon in Jodan. And then I just try to get my suburi and my fundamentals in around as best I can without disrupting the class. That's basically how I try to balance it. It's a bit different if you've got a sensei who's backing you for Jodan. Then obviously they'll be encouraging you with a plan, I guess. They'll observe your Kendo and teach you as normal. You'll just be doing Jodan. That's different. That's great. If you have that, man, I'm jealous. Because what I have is mostly video footage. Now and again I get to talk to someone. I'll speak to people online. Raymond Sensei from Canada, like, he was always a very helpful guy if you're on online groups and stuff like that in the early part of me trying to get started with us, and he was very encouraging and super nice guy. But yeah, That's how I'm doing it. And now and again, I'll take it to a seminar and I'll bounce it off of certain people and see how it stacks up and try and get their advice. But that's it. That's all I can recommend, So there we go. There's the do's, the don'ts, the hows, the wins, and ultimately it's up to you. As a Kendoka, you are your own free agent. But the way of Kendo and the way of Budo teaches us, hopefully for most people, that teaches us that a lot of times you're more responsible for other people than you might think, or you may become more responsible, and you learn to contribute to your dojo and contribute to your community a lot better. So if you're like me and you find yourself as maybe a junior level coach or something like that, it might affect your decision as to when and how much time you dedicate to it and all that kind of thing. These are all things just to consider. Anyway, I've bumbled on about this long enough. Hopefully you find the video interesting. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And like I said, I'm not trying to say my Jodans, the hottest things in sliced bread or whatever. Not at all. I'm just trying to share my story about how I'm trying to go about it and trying to commit to it and hopefully move it forward. Also, something, I guess my last point, right, is I said before how Jodan is quite rare. And finding a teacher is quite rare. There's a part of me that's always wanted to preserve it. And I think that can be a beautiful thing. Same thing for Nito. If there's always a few players that do play it, even though chudan is the most popular, it would, put it this way, if we had lived in a world without Jodan and without Nito, I think some people would miss it. And I think we'd miss some of the beauty of it when it's done well. Obviously, any Kendo that's not being done particularly well, I mean, it doesn't look complete, does it? And that's fine. And I accept that's probably where mine looks right now. But hopefully one day, I mean, I can progress it to a level where, if a junior's looking on and sees me doing keiko, it'll be a reasonable example to look at. And maybe it will pass it along someday. Somebody else will be inspired to carry on the torch or something like that. If that's a result, then I think that's cool. Then that's not a bad thing. Anyway, that's where I'm going to leave it. Take care of yourselves, and I'll try to get back with the video as soon as I can. And something else you can let me know in the comments is, what do you want to see more of? Do you want to see more technical content? Like coaching type stuff, like techniques and stuff like that, or more long form content like this where it's like theoretical discussions. Let me know in the comments. Until then, take it easy. Bye bye.